we had a very large subdivision.
People in our subdivision had just taken the subdivision over from the developer and it's formed a committee.
Our slogan was Chesterfield, a city whose time has come.
Chesterfield Village, a business and residential community second to none. Impeccable lawns and abundant trees. Architecture that fits naturally into the landscape.
Deerberg's wanted the corner at River Valley Drive and Olive.
And we just pretty much all came unglued.
They didn't want so much commercial development. They wanted some control over it.
We wanted to control much more of our own destiny, and we could see that the area was being developed.
In the very beginning, Jack Leonard, I guess, had done this back in the 70s. He tried it and it never went very far. So he was getting a group together and sent us a letter saying, come to a meeting, we want to talk about incorporating Chesterfield.
That was the first time we all kind of came together as a group to fight zoning. So really it was about zoning.
Within a month, he had incorporated the group. He had me as vice president. He was president, of course. We just went from there, and we really had no idea what we were doing.
We went out and you have to get a certain number of signatures.
Saturdays were spent going door to door.
We got an engineering firm to draw up the boundaries, and what we were trying to do with the original boundaries was to not leave any pockets of unincorporated St. Louis County.
We had our differences, but we had a goal. All of us together wanted this. We wanted the people of Chesterfield to govern themselves.
I recruited the volunteers, and I organized everybody to be at the polls, to sign the petitions.
In 1987, it was on the ballot, and we ended up losing by 662 votes.
We almost made it. Didn't quite. We were a little short.
So Jack Leonard and I literally went out the next morning and on that weekend, and we started getting new signatures.
So we said, hey, we aren't going to quit this thing. We spent too much time, we had too much fun on it.
We kind of reorganized. We then all met and began to again recollect and re-get new signatures. We had to do it all over again.
Jack Leonard, that man is the father of Chesterfield. He kept us together. We met around his dining room table every Saturday.
He said, look, we now know who would vote for it and who would vote against it.
And we had a precinct map, and it said who voted yes and who voted no. And I took a big red magic marker, and we'd go down the street line and we'd say, did they vote for us or did they vote against us? And it was like a subdivision. They voted against us, they're out. How about those people? They're for us, where they're in.
And we started gathering petitions and going around and having regular meetings and so on.
We debated. I would debate Gene McNary, who was the county executive at that time.
We had a winning issue, and we knew it was the right thing, not just the winning thing, but it was the right thing.
We had 64% of the votes. We did very well on the second time around.
We were all sworn in on June the 1st, 1988.
We had everybody there, we had a balloon drop, we had speeches, we had a flyby, we had a motorcade. It was very exciting as we wanted to get off on the right start.
Well, I literally had 138 ordinances. We read every one of them 3 times.
This whole book of ordinances had to be read in its entirety. So what we did is we recruited citizen volunteers to come and read. So we'd sit there for hours.
We started at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon and ended at 10:30 at night.
While a court reporter sat there and recorded them. The first ordinance was signed was a big deal. I had a dear friend in New York City sent me a 6-foot-long Schaefer pen. He said, for big deals you need a big pen, sign the first one with this, and I did. I brought it to that gathering.
We borrowed $2 million from Mark Twain Bank to start our funding before we received any income, and we began to operate the city.
There was an office building that was coming out of the ground and was taken shape except for the interior finish, and that was at 922 Roosevelt Parkway. And that became really our first official location.
We were sort of a gypsy city hall, moving from place to place.
Little bitty office.
And I remember distinctly one day reaching and pulling out a drawer, and the front of the drawer falling off my hand. And
if something had to be done, there was nobody in the first 3 months to do it. So if somebody had to dig a ditch or a drainage way or something, we literally went out there we would do anything like that that had to be done that we could do physically by ourselves.
Then we just started hiring.
We interviewed Mike Herring. The way he helped us set up the city is why it is what it is today.
The chance to help shape something and create something where nothing exists, that was really unique and certainly of appeal to me and those that applied for the jobs of all of our department heads.
The very first year, we bought 2 used dump trucks that the city of Maryland Heights was disposing of. We bought them for $5,000 a piece, but it was all we had, and we drove those things proudly. We had our first snow.
We had probably 3 or 4 inches, just a beautiful snow. The ground had been warm up until that moment, and so the snow, while we had 4 inches and it covered everything that was not on the pavement itself, it melted off pretty quickly. Well, we took advantage of the opportunity to have all of our trucks drive and practice running all their snow routes. But they had the plows about 2 inches off the ground, so they weren't really plowing anything, and we weren't spreading any salt because it was melting. We got phone calls after phone call after phone call thanking us for the best snow removal job we'd ever done.
I'm most proud of the fact that our council and I as mayor, we chose Ray Johnson as the police chief, and he's still the police chief.
I was hired some 24 and a half years ago now to come on board and put the department together. So it's been a lot of fun and a great experience for me.
Began to build the department, created our patrol routes, got all of our police cars, all of our uniforms, all of our the equipment that the officers needed.
We wanted to be a part of as the city as opposed to apart from.
Initially, it was rather quiet because we hadn't existed for all the years up until that moment.
We didn't have computers in the cars. We didn't have cell phones at our disposal.
Being a new city, we were faced with challenges.
Probably 1989, interesting story about the Chesterfield Valley. The area down there along the Missouri River was called Gumbo Flats. So we came up with a name. I was part of a group, about 10 people or so, that came up with the name Chesterfield Valley. People were saying, well, you're talking about Gumbo Flats. That's, we all know it's Gumbo Flats, not Chesterfield Valley. We kept persisting. I remember watching the local weather forecast one night, and Bob Richards, who was a meteorologist for Channel 5, referred to the low temperature in the Chesterfield Valley. I about fell out of my chair. It was so exciting because we now had substance. We were real. We were a place.
Everything we were doing was new. We were creating new relationships, new standards, and it was really a good time. This area was really just busting at the seams.
It was just ready to boom.
You can live, work, and play in pleasant surroundings. Here, there is room to grow into the 21st century and beyond.
And then, as you say, came the flood of '93.
In 1993, for the people who worked and lived in these 4,500 acres, the thought of an emergency evacuation wasn't even on the radar screen.
Thursday night, we got a call, I think the levee's going to go.
So that night we're shoring up the levee, and word came back via walkie-talkie that the levee had broken.
Couldn't believe it. Turned on television and it was gone. I mean, it was totally underwater that quick.
You realize that the entire area known as the valley is underwater.
To have the water coming up around my ankles and seeing things that I'd worked a lifetime to put together get ruined.
At that time, our police department was located in that flooded area. We actually had to move out of there in about a 2-hour period, and we had 13 feet of water.
The Army Corps of Engineers, they actually took me out to my office in a big boat.
We had to declare a state of emergency.
It was devastating, the people down there, and they lost so much.
And we had to manage that process.
We decided that we're going to put this place back together and make it better than ever.
And we all got over it. We found out it wasn't the final end. It was the people themselves, not their buildings and not their possessions.
But it brought the community together.
Well, as I like to say, we never had a flood when I was mayor, but poor Jack Leonard, who was my successor, did a very good job.
We had the Mayor's Flood Recovery Task Force, and he was all over it, helping to put the valley back together.
The valley was ripe for a massive redevelopment. THF Realty saw an opportunity to create something down there, which ultimately became the Chesterfield Commons. They also took a very, very important step. That was to declare the area blighted and to establish a TIF, Tax Increment Financing District. And as sales taxes were generated, those dollars were all captured by the TIF and were used to finance the complete rebuilding and strengthening of the levee, improvement of roadway systems, the construction of the Boone's Crossing overpass.
Believe it or not, it was extremely unpopular at that time. Lost in a landslide in 1994. People are stunned by that now. But a lot of us thought the valley is the right thing to do in order to advance the community. It wasn't popular, but it was the right thing to do.
They recognized that that was the lifeblood for the community. That's where commercial. That's where a lot of that retail needed to go, so they acted on it.
All those things combined created the framework within which development could occur and could prosper. Because of all those things coming together and the willingness of the private sector through THF Realty to invest, Chesterfield Commons took place.
A total of 18 office buildings offer spaces from 15,000 to 90,000 square feet. 200 acres of prime sites are still available for future expansion.
Well, as mayor during 1997 to 2001, because we had so much going on that a lot of the people felt like the neighborhoods were being forgotten and that everything was keyed towards development.
Zoning was what it was all about for good 15 years.
One of the things that I proposed at the very beginning was a moratorium on development so we could take a breath.
There's really no authority for a moratorium, so I basically told Nancy Greenwood, who was the mayor at that time, I said, you can't have it more than 6 months.
At the completion of that 6-month moratorium, we were able to create an architectural review board, which really reflects some of the things that people see in the valley.
We have larger lot subdivisions. We worked hard at infrastructure.
At that time, Olive and Clarkson was being widened. MoDOT at that time was not really putting in islands, but I thought that if we could get MoDOT to put landscaped islands in Clarkson and Olive, then it wouldn't look like a runway for an airport. Missouri Department of Highway agreed to do that, and so we now have islands on Clarkson and Olive.
I was mayor really when the internet really became a full force, not only in politics but in life in general.
A lot of changes kept it interesting, a lot of new developments and a lot of opportunities.
By 2001, the city was ready to move, I thought, beyond the conflicts and the controversies that plague cities when they're very young. But we were able to put together partnerships and build a coalition and consensus across the city.
They studied a lot about what makes an environment where companies want to come to your city.
People looked at Chesterfield like it was still a geographic area. But we've been a city, and what we really wanted to do and tried to do and brought emphasis to is, okay, it's a geographic area. Now we want to make it our town. That's why we spent so much time, on the parks and recreation. That's why we built the amphitheater.
The advancement here is it's just phenomenal. I think we have developed a park system that is approaching second to none.
We have wonderful parks and recreation now.
I think the amphitheater and the dog park are my two favorite places in Chesterfield.
People love airplanes. Dick Rapko, who is the director of aviation at Spirit Airport, he had been to a gathering with Buzz Westfall, and they decided at this gathering that, it'd be a good idea to have a fair. The Children's Miracle Network was a beneficiary. This turned out to be the second largest event in St. Louis County.
Chesterfield Arch Stages, Civic Orchestra, those kinds of things. They're all the kinds of things that make Chesterfield a high quality of life place, which is why big companies want to be there, because their executives want to live there.
I think we've done a very good job of keeping the city developed while at the same time having plenty of green space available. I have to figure out where I am sometimes because it's grown so dramatically and the street names have changed and there's development where there wasn't any before.
What you see there today with the growth and development, office buildings and restaurants and other things around the mall and the mall itself have all taken place since the beginning of the city. Clarkson Road is now a major thoroughfare.
Obviously, the valley looks nothing like it did in 1988.
Other than the airport and Andy Gunn's and maybe Orville and Wilbur's, which was down near the airport, there was nothing by way of retail development that has taken place subsequent to all that.
So to look there and see where it is today, to know that we started with literally a single phone line coming out of the roof, and then you look at the city hall, that really gives you a lot of good feelings.
And it really is fun to drive by and see a place that used to be a casual breakfast restaurant that's now in an area that's the largest running shopping center in North America.
Other key ingredients of Chesterfield Village are recreational and residential development. There are hotels, health clubs, community centers, and a 67,000 square foot YMCA. At Chesterfield Village, there's also a lot of space in which to live.
The balance that we had on the original council and the subsequent very talented people that have run this city have made some very, very wise decisions.
Louis Sachs had a comprehensive plan. He had a master plan for the community.
I think our investment in good talent shows it with the City Hall.
The city has been really good about planning, laying out a vision, and then just taking every opportunity when something comes along, jumping on it, and that just furthers us down that road to accomplishing that vision.
We set up an environment and a structure and a partnership and coalitions throughout this community which advance the community to the point where we made it, frankly, considered one of the best communities in the country.
What most families find appealing to the city of Chesterfield is the fact that it is such a well-run city with, I believe, an outstanding reputation.
Here we were able to put together the right coalitions and make it happen.
This was really something, it was a fun time. There was not any great glory, no big city hall, but a lot of good people working together, and I'm very proud of the way it turned out.
And the friends of Mike Herring and the mayors and all the mayors that we had and all the council members that we became such good friends with. You just see somebody and then you start talking about something that you forgot about that had happened and things that it was a great ride.
We have people that really, really care about what we are doing and what we're going to do, and people who celebrate openly the things that we've done and the achievements we've realized and all the positive things we've brought to this community.
There is no other line of work where you can have as big an impact on the community.
I really enjoyed getting to know all the residents of Chesterfield.
It's only been 25 years. It seems like a nanosecond in many ways.
In 25 years, I think we'll continue to be on the ascendancy.
It's a first-class, state-of-the-art operation.
It's hard to imagine any boundaries at this time.
Chesterfield is one of those unique places that we always have a horizon and we never get to that horizon. You're always looking out to the future.
The opportunities are endless here in Chesterfield.
Come join Sachs Properties and share its dream of a bright and prosperous future.